This podcast will fail. Mostly because nobody's going to listen to it. But you might prove me wrong. Who knows? Well, welcome to episode 26 of This Podcast Will Fail. I'm just some guy. Who I am and where I am is irrelevant to the conversations that I come here to have with you, but obviously mostly to myself. So, thank you again to the 2 or 3 folks that seem to be picking up on this every single day. I gotta admit, it's a little bit tempting to try and change this format just enough so that I can maybe ask to hear from you or to, give away, to interact with you. But nonetheless, I'm going to stay on mission. I'm not there at that point where I think it's time for me to open up any kind of social media or put in any kind of comment section or anything like that. I'm not there. I don't see it. I know that this thing is out on Spotify and Google Podcasts and iTunes, but then it's out on a couple of other things that I've never heard of, like Breaker and SoundSnap and a handful of others. So I don't know. I probably should at some point go around and look at those and see what this thing looks like on those platforms, just to get a better sense of if anybody is there trying to speak to me and I'm not speaking back. I don't know. That could all be irrelevant. Maybe at some point I'll dig in and see what that's all about. I know here on Anchor, where I'm creating these podcasts and where they're housed, Anchor has a neat little feature that was like set it up so that people could leave a voice comment. And I thought, oh, that's different. That's interesting. I could maybe put a link somewhere that says, if you want to leave me a message, record here and send it in, and I can use it in this podcast. Oh, whew. But that is the old content creator in me, looking back at the kind of things that I did in my internet radio days, and even early on in the YouTube channel days, and yeah, look, the pull of interacting with someone who's listening to your content is strong. It definitely weighs from time to time, but no, I think for now I will continue on doing what I'm doing and just lay this thing down every single day. Put it out there for whoever happens to find it, and just stick with the comfortable silence that I've created for myself here, not worrying about what this podcast does or doesn't accomplish. So, okay. Today's topic for discussion is again around people, and a couple things stuck out to me today, and I spend a lot of time, or the spaces in between, I guess you could say, I spend looking through my social media feeds. This is how I plug into the world. This is where I get my news and information through the social media accounts that I have set up for myself. Given my age and proclivities, I am primarily a Facebook user, and that, of course, is a complete cesspool of of human behavior. But nonetheless, I have tuned my social media sources into what I believe to be reputable and independent information sources. Okay, I don't want to make this entire conversation about politics, but that's the seedy underbelly of a lot of what unfortunately is to be discussed about today's world and the people in it. So I guess with that loosely held backdrop, what I want to talk about is in the title of this video today. Big words here, but bottom line is I continue to be frustrated by the level of confirmation bias and cognitive dissonance that kind of go hand in hand in so many of the comments and conversations that I see taking place on social media. So let's start with the first point. Confirmation bias. Both sides are guilty of this, right? There are, and I have followed plenty of them in the past, blogs that pass themselves off as news sources when they're not actually news sources. They're just blogs. They're individual people who fancy themselves to be journalists of one fashion or another. And again, let's be completely fair and honest here. Both sides of the political spectrum, especially in the United States, are guilty of conducting endless numbers of blogs dressed up as news sources out there to share political opinion and fight the good political battle against their quote-unquote enemies. Again, I'm not necessarily interested in discussing my own personal affiliations and affectations. However, I've been there. I took part in one of them once, actually, a long time ago. I was getting to be a very active follower of one particular political blog, and I was fancying myself a writer at the time. I've told you how in the past, writing was one of the things that I wanted to dabble in. So I approached this individual who was running this blog and said, hey, there's a little thing on their website, his website, that said, I'm looking for writers, pitch yourself to me and maybe you can come on board as a correspondent, right? Correspondent. And I did, and he did. And I was welcomed in and said, all right, great. You know what? I'm going to give you one assignment a month that I would like you to write about. But in the meantime, I would like you to submit an article to me every week to be published on the site. All right. Okay, great. I never got an assignment from him. And I submitted a grand total of 3 articles before I started realizing, hey, none of the articles I'm submitting are getting published as I'm watching the feed. I was certainly not the only person contributing, right? A contributor. But I did start to question, so I finally reached out and come to find out that this young man who was the founder of this thing and who was running it was also apparently in the midst of a political campaign of his own to run for Congress in Florida. I thought, well, okay, I guess that's interesting. I could see where that would take away time, and certainly articles are continuing to appear on the site, just not the ones I was writing. I reached out. I said, hey, what's happening here? I haven't heard from you and whatever. I'll tell you these years later that I don't remember if he actually even replied. I don't recall. I think I might have gotten 1 or 2 responses from him. But it became clear to me that the side project blog that he was trying to pass off as a news source was certainly just maybe a piece of a front and part of his big picture plan. I don't know. In the end, the content started shifting way into the absurd. I mean, it was absolute. Well before now, granted, folks, this is 2008, I think, maybe 2012. I can't remember, but it was one of the it was one of the cycles in prehistory, way before the term of fake news was ever brought to bear. This became just a hotbed of conspiracy theory and just nonsense. And I finally ended up saying, you know what, enough of that. I'm really not interested in being anything to do with this. But that is a perfect example of this confirmation bias industry that exists out there. And it is so sad to see so many people get caught up in these twisted and misconstrued and downright fabricated and fake quote-unquote news stories that are out there. But people fall for it because it speaks to what they believe in, and they take every single word that is published as evidence and confirmation of their biases. So there's that. The other side of the coin and what it leads into is I think probably the bigger issue that exists, at least in my country right now, and that is cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is a word I love. It's a sad thing and it's a dangerous thing, but it is present everywhere nowadays, where an individual will just cling to a belief or a viewpoint or an item, some piece of information that they found to be attractive enough that they wholeheartedly place their belief behind it. But when presented with information and actual facts and relevant data to disprove the thing that they believe, it's almost comical. It's almost the stereotypical finger in the ears, la, 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 I'm not listening, you're a liar, it's fake. And I refuse to believe that because I read this other thing that confirmed what I believe. It's scary. That is, I mean, more so than the confirmation bias stuff, the cognitive dissonance that exists out there, where people just absolutely refuse to ever believe that their hero, whichever person or group or affiliation that they believe in, now this almost reaches the level of worship, that they are so invested in their side being completely above and beyond reproach, never to be questioned, and any effort, or frankly, any information or data or relevant facts that run counter to that thing they believe, nope, that's not real, that's made up, that's fake, I refuse to believe it, fingers in the ears, la 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 la. Wow. And it's scary, and it is dangerous, really, honestly. If you want to talk about the devolving of a society, these two things hand in hand are, again, scary. So I'll give you a real life example, and I think that's where today's conversation came from. Was so I was interacting with some folks on Facebook. I live in a small town. I think I mentioned that way back in season 1. But I live in this tiny rural town of about 8,000 people, kind of in the middle of nowhere, about 35-40 minutes outside of a mid-size city. No major metropolitan area necessarily, but again, enough to be on the map and be known. Well, I live about 35 minutes away from there in a town of, podunk farm fields, and I think there's a grand total of 3 or 4 traffic lights, a tiny grocery store, a McDonald's, a Burger King, a gas station, and a Walgreens. That's about it. That's all we got. That's our claim to fame. So there's a town Facebook page that is utilized primarily, at least you would think, by the families in town to communicate things about community events, about things that are going on in the schools, about garage sales and whatever. It's just kind of a community information forum. So I was kind of discussing something rather innocuous with a group of them, and one individual said something that I found a little odd, and I thought, okay, that doesn't quite make sense, because I don't really know this person. I've seen their name around. I've had 2 or 3 interactions with them. And again, I'm being vague, but I'm being vague on purpose, and sorry if that's annoying, but I just, the substance isn't as important as the scenario. So this person commented something that made me scratch my head a little, and I was a little uncertain. So I went ahead and played full on Facebook stalker. And I looked at their personal profile because, again, I don't know this person, but I'm curious to see what's going on. And I found a a personal profile that was, good golly, way out in the middle of confirmation bias and cognitive dissonance. And God, this person is a loon. And it's interesting because here I am involved in a relevant conversation about something going on in the community. It's all good. It's nothing, nothing bad. It's something that's being discussed, and this individual's nuts. This person is, whew. So I'm taken aback, and I don't even know what to do with this information, because now I have an image in my mind of this person who is so far outside of anybody I would ever deign to deal with in my day-to-day life. Like, is that really what you believe? Holy crap. I'm even thinking about the things that I saw on that person's personal profile, their wall, the stuff that they chose to share, and the deep, like, crazy level conspiracy theory confirmation stuff. I couldn't do anything other than shake my head and think, we all go about our day-to-day lives interacting with people in our communities, at work, people we learn through our kids' affiliations with other kids, other parents of the children, other groups that we may come across. You just never know what is really behind the eyes and mind of the person you're talking to until you really know. And I don't know how to conduct from there. Like, it becomes clear to me that I have absolutely no reason to want to even try to engage in a conversation with this person. Certainly not about the things that they believe. Good golly. Because there's no point. There's no changing someone's mind about some of the stuff that they posted. It's, forget about it. They're never going to listen to facts or reason. But do I even want to deal with this person outside of that context? That's the real conundrum for me, because you should be able to conduct life outside of just politics. You should. We all should. But I'm hard pressed to see where anybody can anymore. You can't ignore that the core beliefs of the individual you're dealing with are so far askew of your own core beliefs. This goes so far beyond we have nothing in common. So I don't know. I'm struggling with that a little bit. I'm pretty sure, as I said, that I just have no use for this person, and nor do I care to continue with the conversation that I'm having with that group of people, because now I wonder if I shouldn't look up all their profiles and wonder if they look at mine and say, well, he's just as much of a partisan such and such as whatever. Oh, okay, that might get me extradited from the group. I don't know, but it's something that the world is dealing with, and that we're all going to have to find a way to come to terms with somewhere, somehow, and I'm not really sure what the answer is, but it's frustrating and it's concerning, and I don't know if it's going to get any better, or if it's going to get worse before it gets better. Who knows? Well, I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover today. Thank you, anybody that may have possibly listened through this whole thing. I hope I gave you something to think about. The challenge is certainly out there to see if you can find me. I think it would be funny as hell. Maybe I will pick out that link from Anchor and put it somewhere unobvious that nobody would see it, and nobody would obviously know what it is unless there's a trail of breadcrumbs. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't probably do any of this. But I know that I've left enough breadcrumbs out there that if you look hard enough and if you gave a damn, you might be able to find me and send me a message that says, "Hey, I found you. The podcast didn't fail." But anyways, I still don't think anybody's listening at this point, 20 minutes in, so I will go ahead and close it out. With my thanks again, and I hope wherever you are, you're having a great day, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a good one.